Please like the video and share it so that it reaches many more people and you get sawaba, or rewards from Allah. This could be a sawabe jariyah or continuous reward for you long after you are gone.
Volume 5, Book 59, number 608. Narrated by Marwan and al-Miswar bin Makrama. When the delegate of Hawazin came to Allah's apostle declaring their conversion to Islam and asked him to return their properties and captives, Allah's apostle got up and said to them, "There is involved in this matter, the people whom you see with me, and the most beloved talk to me, is the true one. So choose one of two alternatives, either the captives or the properties. I have been waiting for you, i.e. have not distributed the booty." Allah's apostle had delayed the distribution of their booty over 10 nights after his return from Taif. So when they came to know that Allah's apostle was not going to return to them but one of the two, they said, "We prefer to have our captives." So Allah's apostle got up amongst the Muslims, and praising Allah as he deserved, said, "To proceed. Your brothers have come to you with repentance and I see it logical to return their captives. So, whoever of you likes to do that as a favor, then he can do it. And whoever of you likes to stick to his share till we give him from the very first booty which Allah will give us, then he can do so." The people said, "We do that, i.e. return the captives, willingly as a favor." O Allah's apostle. Allah's apostle said, "We do not know which of you have agreed to it and which have not. So go back and let your chiefs forward as your decision." They went back and their chief spoke to them. And they, i.e. the chiefs, returned to Allah's apostle and informed him that all of them had agreed to give up their captives, with pleasure, and had given their permission, i.e. that the captives be returned to their people. The sub-narrator said, "That is what has reached me about the captives of Hawazin tribe." Volume 5, Book 59, number 609. Narrated by Ibn Umar. When we returned from the Battle of Hunain, Umar asked the Prophet about a vow which he had made during the pre-Islamic period of ignorance that he would perform itikaf. The Prophet ordered him to fulfill his vow. Volume 5, Book 59, number 610. Narrated by Abu Qatada. We set out along with the Prophet during the year of the Battle of Hunain, and when we faced the enemy, the Muslims, with the exception of the Prophet and some of his companions, retreated before the enemy. I saw one of the pagans overpowering one of the Muslims, so I struck the pagan from behind his neck, causing his armor to be cut off. The pagan headed towards me and pressed me so forcibly that I felt as if I was dying. Then death took him over and he released me. Afterwards I followed Umar and said to him, "What is wrong with the people?" He said, "It is the order of Allah." Then the Muslims returned to the battle after the flight, and, after overcoming the enemy, the Prophet sat and said, "Whoever had killed an infidel and has an evidence to this issue, will have the salb, i.e. the belonging of the deceased, e.g. clothes, arms, horse, etc." I stood up and said, "Who will be my witness?" and then sat down. Then the Prophet repeated his question. Then the Prophet said the same, for the third time. I got up and said, "Who will be my witness?" and then sat down. The Prophet asked his former question again. So I got up. The Prophet said, "What is the matter, O Abu Qatada?" So I narrated the whole story. A man said, "Abu Qatada has spoken the truth, and the salb of the deceased is with me, so please compensate Abu Qatada on my behalf." Abu Bakr said, "No, by Allah, it will never happen that the Prophet will leave a lion of Allah who fights for the sake of Allah and his apostle and give his spoils to you." The Prophet said, "Abu Bakr has spoken the truth. Give it, the spoils, back to him, O man." So he gave it to me and I bought a garden in the land of Banu Salama with it, i.e. the spoils, and that was the first property I got after embracing Islam. Volume 5, Book 59, number 611. Narrated by Abu Qatada. When it was the day of the Battle of Hunain, I saw a Muslim man fighting with one of the pagans, and another pagan was hiding himself behind the Muslim in order to kill him. So I hurried towards the pagan who was hiding behind the Muslim to kill him, and he raised his hand to hit me, but I hit his hand and cut it off. That man got hold of me and pressed me so hard that I was afraid that I would die. Then he knelt down and his grip became loose, and I pushed him and killed him. The Muslims, excepting the Prophet and some of his companions, started fleeing, and I too fled with them. Suddenly I met Umar bin al-Khattab amongst the people, and I asked him, "What is wrong with the people?" He said, "It is the order of Allah." Then the people returned to Allah's apostle after defeating the enemy. Allah's apostle said, "Whoever produces a proof that he has killed an infidel will have the spoils of the killed man." So I got up to look for an evidence to prove that I had killed an infidel, but I could not find anyone to bear witness for me, so I sat down. Then it came to my mind that I should speak of it, and I mentioned the case to Allah's apostle. A man from the persons who were sitting with him, i.e. the Prophet, said, "The arms of the deceased one whom he, i.e. Abu Qatada, has mentioned, are with me. So please compensate him for it, i.e. the spoils." Abu Bakr said, "No, Allah's apostle will not give it, i.e. the spoils, to a weak humble person from Quraysh, and leave one of Allah's lions who fights on behalf of Allah and his apostle." Allah's apostle then got up and gave that spoils to me, and I bought with it a garden which was the first property I got after embracing Islam. Volume 5, Book 59, number 612. Narrated by Abu Musa. When the Prophet had finished from the Battle of Hunain, he sent Abu Amir at the head of an army to out as he, i.e. Abu Amir, met Durayd bin as-Summa, and Durayd was killed and Allah defeated his companions. The Prophet sent me with Abu Amir. Abu Amir was shot at his knee with an arrow which a man from Jusham had shot and fixed into his knee. I went to him and said, "O uncle, who shot you?" He pointed me out, his killer, saying, "That is my killer who shot me with an arrow." So I headed towards him and overtook him, and when he saw me, he fled, and I followed him and started saying to him, "Won't you be ashamed? Won't you stop?" So that person stopped, and we exchanged 2 hits with the swords, and I killed him. Then I said to Abu Amir, "Allah has killed your killer." He said, "Take out this arrow." So I removed it, and water oozed out of the wound. He then said, "O son of my brother, convey my compliments to the Prophet and request him to ask Allah's forgiveness for me." Abu Amir made me his successor in commanding the people, i.e. troops. He survived for a short while and then died. Later, I returned and entered upon the Prophet at his house, and found him lying in a bed made of stalks of date palm leaves knitted with ropes, and on it there was bedding. The strings of the bed had their traces over his back and sides. Then I told the Prophet about our and Abu Amir's news, and how he had said, "Tell him to ask for Allah's forgiveness for me." The Prophet asked for water, performed ablution, and then raised hands, saying, "O Allah's forgive, you bade Abu Amir." At that time I saw the whiteness of the Prophet's armpits. The Prophet then said, "O Allah, make him, i.e. Abu Amir, on the day of resurrection, superior to many of your human creatures." I said, "Will you ask Allah's forgiveness for me?" On that, the Prophet said, "O Allah, forgive the sins of Abdullah bin Kay and admit him to a nice entrance, i.e. paradise, on the day of resurrection." Abu Burda said, "One of the prayers was for Abu Amir and the other was for Abu Musa, i.e. Abdullah bin Kay."